So again, I want to keep this to about 30 minutes, but again, if any of you have questions or want to stick around, I'll stick around as long as you like. So first thing here is I thought I'd debut, maybe you've seen this already, but we've been working on a new logo for our church and school, and this is it here. And there's a lot of meaning in behind this, but just a quick 10-second summary. You see the cross there, and this is somewhat reminiscent of our cross in the front of our church. But then you see a compass rose here, Jesus as our true north, and then you see sun with rays, and there's some symbolism there. And then the outer circle, and a circle is a symbolism of eternal. Pastor Parsons would like to, before he leaves, preach a sermon just kind of going into more detail about that symbol. So I won't take away his thunder if he's still planning on doing that. But I think it ended up looking pretty sharp. All right. So the topic that is probably on everybody's mind, and I'm getting some back feed, so if you can check and see if you've got your mic on, can you mute it, please? Just double check. If you've got a mic on, mute it. That way we don't have sound coming through. So this is the question everybody wants to know the answer to is, what does school look like this fall? And I wish I could look into the crystal ball and tell you 100% what it's going to look like. There aren't any schools or districts out there in the state of Wisconsin that I know of that have rolled out official plans. Maybe there is, and I missed them, but it's been pretty quiet, just kind of waiting and seeing how things play out here once things have reopened, and what are the cases like, and what does new information look like from the world of medicine and science. As time goes on, it seems like each day and week there's new information. So while there's behind the scenes work being done, I don't know if anybody has come out and said for sure 100% this is the way it's going to be. I think you'll start to see that here in the next couple weeks, and I'll share with you what the school board and I are looking at. Nothing is for certain yet, but by the end of June, we want to have something for sure in place. But of course, as you know, in this world of change, things can just at a rapidly pace shift gears and go a different way. You know, an example is a couple of weeks ago, if I would have said, hey, COVID probably won't even be in the headlines, the top headlines these days, you would have said I was crazy, but yet that's what's happening right now with the protests going on around our country. So what does next week look like? What does next month look like? I can't tell you for sure. But here are some thoughts. So we're planning to start school on August 25th on campus with operation guidelines in place. But, you know, we need to recognize and be realistic that conditions may change between now and then. So my desire is that we are on school, kids on campus, and we are rolling like we normally would the first day of school. I think emotionally and economically, that's really important for kids and for parents. So I understand that, and I realize that. So if all possible, we are going to open our doors. So if some of you are just coming in, we're getting some back feed. So again, if you've got your mic on, if you can just mute it, that'd be awesome. So we're really looking at 3 different models. One is on-site learning with operation guidelines. The second is virtual learning, which we just experienced. And for some families that was good. For some families it was okay. For some families it was challenging, depending on age of children, depending on work, you know, depending on their family situation. It is quite possible that there could be rolling quarantines when we get into the flu season. What does that look like? your guess is as good as mine. Maybe it doesn't happen. I pray it doesn't, but I think you need to be prepared for that. So one thing that I would maybe start to talk about with your employers, if possible, is what does it look like this school year if kids are if school is shut down for a while and we're quarantined. I imagine that everybody has that in the back of their mind, but it's something just to maybe dial it up. The third model that could be a possibility is a hybrid learning model. These are the three models that Fond du Lac School District are looking at right now. Nothing official in our district, but broad strokes, this is what they're looking at. And I'll go into a little bit more detail with hybrid learning in a little bit. I think here's one thing that we need to all keep in mind. We cannot 100% eliminate the risk. As much as I would like to, I can't guarantee 100% that if your child walks into the school building that he or she will not be exposed to COVID or something else, right? Just like the common cold, regular flu, I can't guarantee that there's a 100% elimination of that risk. But there's much we can do to limit that risk based on God's blessing of science. And there's a balance there too, right? As believers, we put our trust in God, but at the same time, we use the tools that He's blessed us with. And science is a servant of God. Science doesn't trump God. Science is a servant of God. And we as believers use science, we use research to good stewards of our time, talents, and health here on this side of eternity. As of today, June 9th, there are no state mandates for reopening K-12 private or public schools. The only mandate that's in effect right now through the DPI is that there can't be any instruction going on campuses or activities going on school campuses until July 1. But there is nothing that has been put out there by Governor Evers or the DPI or anyone else regarding the fall. But there are a lot of recommendations out there from the CDC, from DPI, and from the Fond du Lac Health Department. If you see me pause in here, there's just more people coming in the meeting, so just be patient with me. Okay, so if we start August 25th, what does that look like? Again, if you've got your mics on, if you can mute them, I think I can probably as a moderator mute everyone, but I think I'd have to backpedal myself back to the starting screen. So just double check, and if your mic is on, just hit mute. That way people aren't getting other noise coming in. I'm just going to kind of scroll through it. If I see anybody with a mic on, I can individually do that. I can mute you. Okay, so potential guidelines. Number one, limit respiratory droplet exposure. So as much as I can read, this is kind of the topic that health and science is really focusing on these days. That droplet exposure is the process by which this virus is being spread. Not necessarily through sweat, not just by touching, but by respiratory droplet exposure. Now, if I sneeze on my hand and then go and give you high five and you rub your face, that's definitely respiratory droplet exposure. So we want to try to limit that. So here's some things that we're thinking about. No parents allowed in the building during school hours. And some of these really kill me to say this because we've worked hard to try to build faith as a as a large school that tries to feel like a small community. And some of these things go against, you know, what I really desire for our school culture, but I got to think about it in just temporary short terms, right? So no parents allowed in the school building during school hours. Again, limiting exposure. Possible staggered drop-off times based on last name. You know, so maybe we open up the doors a little bit earlier besides 7:40. Maybe it's 7:30, and from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, we've got staggered times where hopefully within a 10-minute window, if your last name is up for that 10-minute window, you're dropping off your kids so that we don't have a rush of kids coming in at any one time. And then along with that, probably designated entry points into the building. Temperature screenings of faculty and students upon arrival. So faculty, you know, we already have infrared thermometers that I've ordered and have arrived, and they're pretty cool. You just point them to your forehead, and in a matter of 3 to 5 seconds, you get a reading, and it's even color coded. You know, green, you're good to go. Red, no, there's concern there. Everything that I read, 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit is kind of the trigger point. Anything at that point or higher is probably an indicator of some infection. Doesn't mean it's COVID, not necessarily, but there's some infection going on, which it could be. So a 100.4 temperature reading or higher, I would say for faculty and students, you're being sent home. Because again, we want to limit the risk. Any signs of illness, you know, as parents, as you wake up your kids, whether it's, you know, coughing, upset stomach, whatever it may be, if there's any signs of illness, and this is for my faculty as well, you know, we need to stay home. Again, we don't want to expose anybody to anything. You know, the question has come up with my faculty, well, what about seasonal allergies? And I think we just got to take that case-by-case scenario. I think faculty understand their bodies, and you as parents would understand your kids. Again, if there's a temperature of 100.4 or higher, then it's not seasonal allergies that we're dealing with. We're dealing with some type of infection. Hand sanitizer upon entrance. So whatever is being brought into school, we want to kill that right away. We did that last year with hand washing, but I want to even get the kids sooner, right when they get through the doors, have hand sanitizer stations and just right away have them sanitize their hands. This is a really big one, and parents, you know, this is really important for you to start right now today. Regular personal hygiene instruction. So face touching is a big deal with any type of infection, but we like to touch our faces, whether it's putting our hand on our face, rubbing our eyes, biting our nails, whatever it may be. That's a big deal. So if you can start to get your kids to be out of the habit of face touching, you have done a good thing to help your kids, not just with COVID, but any type of sickness. Sneezing, you know, sneezing into sleeves, common sense, like personal contact, touching others, that's super important.
I looked at your academic requirements report, and I did not see anything that you were missing. You should be good to go once the registrar's office verifies your information.
I hear someone talking here, so I'm just going to scroll through and see if someone's mic is unmuted and try to mute them.
Is it me?
How do I move? Look at this. It's
I don't see it, but if you guys can double check again, if your mic is on, mute it, please. Okay. Lunch in classrooms. So again, we want to try to just eliminate being tight together, and anytime you have food involved, and you're eating, things can, there's a risk of exposure. No sharing of snacks or food, which we already try to implement. And then no birthday treats. So I'm not going to allow anything coming in, whether it's pre-packaged or not. I just don't want to take a risk of anything being handed out and someone getting sick. So, some of these are bummers. Some of these, are little joys, small joys that kids have. And maybe you just got to rethink things, and hopefully you can be understanding of what I'm trying to do here. Next one, self-contained classrooms with emphasis on social distancing. There's a lot of things out there about maintaining 6 feet. That's kind of the distance by which droplets come out of your mouth when you're talking. Right now, if we were to have every child on campus and in every classroom, our classroom spaces may not enable us to be 6 feet apart, desk to desk. We're gonna try to do the best we can. The other possibility is, do you go AM PM sessions or every other day, which I think would be a huge pain in the butt for families. So I want to try to avoid that. So know that we're going to try to social distance desks as best we can with the space that we have. And self-contained classroom means that, again, we want to, if we think about our whole school population, and then each classroom is a population unto itself. So within the large population or small populations, and if we can keep those small populations together and limiting how much interaction they have with other populations within the building, then we're going in the right direction of limiting risks. So what does that look like? Recess time, keeping kids of the same grade together. Chapel time is probably going to be in the classroom via some type of online video. Bathroom times, having scheduled times where we don't have kids from different classrooms mixing. Things like that. Having an on-site sickness protocol, so if someone does get sick at school, what are we going to do? We're going to have a designated area, and we'll have a protocol in place on what to do. Definitely increase cleaning with disinfectant that's been proven to kill COVID, with emphasis on hotspots. And what I mean by that are things like door handles, desktops, light switches, and those things we may try to do throughout the day. Something that we've already done is we've ordered electrostatic sanitation guns. Kind of sounds like something out of the future or science fiction, but these are tools that basically you spray this aerosol, and already if you talk to people in the medical fields, they're using these, like even like fire departments or medics, but it sprays out the aerosol and is statically charged, and it'll wrap around a chair, a desk, whatever it may be, and sanitize it. So at the end of a school day, we can have our custodial staff in the matter of a couple minutes have a classroom completely sanitized. So we have one already on campus that we're beginning to use for church services, and we have a second one on order. These things are hard to come by right now, but we're hoping that we'll get a second one by the end of the summer. Here's a big one, potential face coverings. And, me personally, I don't like wearing them, and you probably don't either. Maybe you've gone to Menards and you know that they have made that mandatory. And I've kind of gotten used to that at Menards. What would that look like for a school with, pre-K to 8 children and faculty wearing face coverings every day? It could be a challenge. I don't have an answer for this yet. I really want to find out a little bit more about what other districts are doing, what the DPI is going to recommend, and obviously what our school board feels comfortable with. Certainly,
yeah, you're on.
we could possibly make it optional, but I don't know. Maybe it is something that we got to look closer at, and something to keep in mind. Increased hand washing and hand sanitizer stations. With that, just posted signs in bathrooms about how to wash hands. I'm just going to pause here. Comment came in. Just thought on face coverings with a child with hearing impairment. This is a huge issue for him. He needs to look at your mouth. Absolutely. So those things are part of the dynamic. I know that there are now face coverings that are being marketed as transparent, so that you can see a person's lips when they're talking. But again, something to keep in mind. Bathroom guidelines, you talked a little bit about this. Limiting number of students at any one time, entry doors propped open, no touch trash cans, posted hand washing instructions, things like that. Staggered dismissal times. Again, we want to get everybody out. I'm not talking about over the course of an hour, but maybe it's over the course of 30 minutes where we are staggering and getting kids out at different times, so that there's not if you're ever in the building at the end of the school day and the hallway is just all of a sudden just packed with kids. And so again, that's a risk that I want to try to limit. Utilize outdoors as much as possible, especially in the fall, right? If we can have some classes outside, definitely recesses outside, PE. When you're outside, the risk of being exposed goes down dramatically. Now, here are some wild cards that I don't have answers for. What about choirs? There's science out there, and this is interesting, that says that if breathing is your baseline for how much droplets come out of your mouth, when you're talking, it's 10 times that amount. And when you're singing, it's 60 times that amount. And so, our choirs have a mix of grades, and they're sitting beside each other. And I just don't know how that's going to play out yet. I want to have a conversation with Mr. Whitty over at WLA, because I know that he's definitely looking at that. Athletics, Mr. Walta is in constant dialogue with other ADs from our conference. My guess is with athletics, it's going to be a trickle-down effect. So you're starting to see pro, NBA basketball is coming back in a very controlled manner. The next level is universities. If universities have fall sports, then you're probably going to see high schools have fall sports, and then middle schools will follow in line. Again, what does that look like with restrictions, spectators? I don't know. That's a wild card right now. Physical education classes, we can have them outside and limit, just how much equipment is being handled from kid to kid, then we're limiting our risk. Field trips, that's another one that's on my mind. School events, whether it's at the beginning of the year, which is awesome. We get all the kids together and mix them up, different age levels, and have a field day just to get them interacting with each other. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that this year. Or like our fall academic night. Extended care is another one. How do we try to have self-contained grades throughout the day, but then before and after we have extended care where ages are mixing together? That's another wild card that I don't have an answer to right now. Our contingency plans. So again, I want school to start. I want kids on campus. Again, I think that's healthy emotionally, academically, and economically for our community and for you as parents as well. If at some point we have to switch over to virtual learning, we will do that. As a faculty, we learned a ton when we had to pivot at a moment's notice. And I'm so proud of our faculty. I think they did an awesome job. But we've already talked about it. There's some tweaks that we would do if we'd go back into a virtual learning model. If we would have to do that, God willing, would be a short stint. But again, I just don't know. A hybrid model, you know, in some educational circles, this is being discussed. This would be tough on I know, parents. A mix of in-building instruction and virtual learning. That could look like an AM, PM, you know, where half the kids are on campus in the morning, half are in the afternoon, or an every other day type scenario, or an every other week type scenario. Again, you're trying to limit exposure within your population of students. Again, these are contingency plans, and the number one plan is to be back in school. But it's going to be important that we make these plans and put them into place if they have to. Something in the line of this, or in the thread of this, is Virtual Learning Academy. The school board has approved and established an ad hoc committee just to study the feasibility of a faith virtual learning academy. And there you see our committee members, and we're going to be meeting this week and to get that ball rolling. I want you to look for a survey coming up in the next week or so that we're going to probably ask you some questions, such as, you know, if you had the option of your child being virtually taught at home or coming to school, would you choose virtual? For some families, maybe there is an underlying health issue in the household, or maybe their child just learns better that way, whatever it may be. I can't guarantee that we can offer that. One thing that I found is that virtual learning is pretty strenuous. So if you're asking a teacher to maintain a brick and mortar classroom and a virtual classroom, that's a lot to ask. So if we do some type of virtual learning academy, we may need to bring in different staff to do that, or think that through and how that could be. But just so you know, we are looking at that. And maybe long term, this is a ministry opportunity for our school. You know, I'm thinking just not within our community, but why couldn't we enroll kids across the state? Or why not, why couldn't we enroll kids across the nation? So that's just something to think about long term. And I'm kind of excited about it. We'll see where it goes. We'll keep you posted. Okay, important summer dates. I want you just to pay attention to summer newsletter, early July. You know, it's by the end of June here, early July, I want to have things with the school board in motion and saying, okay, this is our plan, and unless something, you know, significant happens. So that summer newsletter will probably be the tool that we use to communicate. All right, now here are the operation guidelines that we are going to follow as we start school. Family visits, you know, we try to do home visits mid-July to early August. We'll give you some options. We'll do a driveway visit with you, you know, maintain some social distancing there, but still make a contact. Or we can do a Zoom visit, or in-person visit at school. Again, we're going to limit, you know, just how many people are around. But we do want to make a contact with you. It's so important to start building relationships with you. And we were very blessed last year in that our teachers had been able to build relationships with you as parents and students before we quarantined. I couldn't imagine starting the school year virtually and trying to build those relationships behind a screen. So if at all possible, you know, we want to get those visits in. Our back to school night and pre-K orientation night will likely be a virtual experience on those dates. We will keep you posted. Opening worship services. Traditionally, we've made like one service, like the late service on that weekend, the opening service. I'd like to talk with pastors and probably make it an opening worship services of the weekend, so that we can, again, spread folks apart. And as for now, church services will continue to be online, so that'll be an option as well. And then, of course, our first day of classes is scheduled for August 25th. Before I get into just back to or parents end of year parent surveys, I'll just stop and pause here, and if anybody has a question, I will address it now. Let me just bring up my chat feature here. People want to get it on screen, so I'll just leave that up. Yeah, a couple comments came in. You know, face coverings will increase the kids touching their faces potentially as they adjust it. That certainly could be the case. Yeah. So no matter what, it's important for us as parents and teachers to start just teaching kids, don't touch your face no matter what, whether you get a mask on or not. So appreciate that thought. What's the plan for extended care? Yeah, again, that's a wild card. I am going to talk about extended care in a little bit here, just with some new ideas that we want to implement regardless of COVID. So I'll get to that here in a moment. All right, so end of year parent surveys. I want to hit some of the questions or most of the questions that we had asked. So the first question was just how pleased were you with your child's Christian education? We had a total of 84 responses on the survey, and this is how parents responded to that first question. So I was pleased that you know, most parents were in the 8, 9, or 10 category. Had some 4s and 5s, nothing below 4. Another question that we put in front of you was just, you know, how well are we carrying out our mission statement? And 83% strongly agreed that we're carrying it out. Well, 13% agreed. And then we just had some small percentages with disagree and strongly disagree, which makes me sad. And I want to try to fix that the best I can. You know, I want 100% strongly agreeing that we're meeting our mission statement. This was another question we asked in regards to COVID-19. You know, will this impact your decision to return? And most people said no. Some said maybe, some said yes. And again, each family situation is different. The key takeaways that, and some of the solutions for those key takeaways that we came up with, and when I say we, we're talking about faculty and school board as we reviewed this, are as follows. First of all, we had a ton of supportive and positive comments. So I feel like our school has a healthy climate and culture, and you as parents are communicating that with us. So thank you. We're not perfect, but I think we're a really good school. Here's one thing that came out, assimilation for new families, just especially younger families. You know, how do we get our new families to feel like they're part of our community? So last year we started an official position, assimilation coordinator, and that's Mrs. Wigan, and she did some things, and we're looking to expand that. We've already had a faculty discussion on that. Homework load came up a number of times, and so I would like to get a parent survey, send out a quick parent survey to gather just more data, because I think homework can really vary depending on age level, ability level of a child, you know, how much activities they're in. So I'll never apologize for our school having homework. Repetition is still the mother of learning until God tells us otherwise, but you all know that just from your own life experience. But at the same time, you know, I'm sensitive to how much homework a child has. You know, my rule of thumb is take your child's grade level times 10, and that's how many minutes on average they should have. Some nights are going to be less, some nights are going to be more, but on average, that's how much. And so if you've got a child that is an outlier that has way more or way less, that's probably a red flag in which you need to have a discussion with the teacher and see what's going on. But Again, I wanna do a parent survey and just find out a little bit more, gather more data on that topic. Tuition costs come up, you know, being sensitive to the cost of education. It's important that, you know, we as a church and school board and myself are transparent and budget carefully to operate our school. Just a quick nugget here. You know, our next year's budget is set at $1.6 million. So it takes quite a bit to run our school. 78% of that cost is in staffing. So when we talk about, you know, tuition, either we have to raise revenue or decrease costs. And the major cost expenditure is staffing. So do we start cut staffing? Do we reduce compensation packages? I don't know if those are the answers, but that's just, you need to understand that, you know, most of our cost is in staffing. Our revenue sources as a school, church offerings are set at $700,000 next year. That's 42% of the cost to operate our school. So still, that is the #1 way in which we are funding our school. The other two ways, and I'll just get the last one in there too. School choice is set to bring in about $630,000 next year. That's 38% of our operating cost. If we were not participating in that program, that $630,000 then would need to come from church or in the form of tuition. So I feel like ministerially wise and economically, school choice has been a blessing, and we'll continue to utilize it unless that program were to demand something of us that is against Scripture. Tuition really only brings in 13% of the operating cost. So you start to kind of hopefully understand that a little bit. Miscellaneous, that would be things like extended care, hot lunch program, script. That brings in about 7% of our operating costs. So tuition costs, that came up in the survey. I'm just going to check here, see if we've got any comments. Question came up, are you planning on taking temperatures every day? Yes, we would do temperature screenings every day. All right, key takeaways and solutions continued. You know, some parents just talked about communication fatigue, feel like they're getting bombarded with information all the time. So we want to try to streamline communication. One thing that we're going to try to do next year is launch an app. And that app will help streamline communication. And once we get that, I'm in the process of working with a company called Legit Apps to get that up and running. And once that's launched, I'll give you more information on that. But I think that'll help streamline communication and even help you cater what communication you specifically want as a parent. Frustration with paying tuition and fees on GradeLink. You know, so recognize that GradeLink is not perfect when we're working on collecting tuition and fees. It's a school information system that works really well in a lot of ways. They're still improving the platform by which you know, people pay. But things that we're going to try to do to help ease this frustration. One, we're eliminating field trip fees. Looks like we got someone drawing on our screen here. So if I start to see something inappropriate here, I'm gonna shut us down. So if you're a Zoom bomber on our Zoom here, just ask that you not do that. Second thing is better parent training. We need to just be able to teach you how to navigate through GradeLink much better. I think if you learn to navigate through it a little bit better, that it might be ease some frustration. And then just continue to voice concerns and frustrations with GradeLink. That's what we do as a school if something comes up, and they're very open to trying to fix things. One other thing that I didn't have on here, I think someone had asked about, monthly tuition and hot lunch and recess invoices, instead of being sent home via paper, do that electronically via email. So we'll look into doing that. That way nothing will get stuck in a backpack and forgotten. Let's see, a couple of questions that came up. Does being a part of school choice affect decisions you make in regards to back to school plans for the fall? No, absolutely not. No, there's nothing in school choice that says if you participate in this program, you have to do X, Y, or Z because of COVID. So that does not impact. Second, how would a typical classroom be laid out with social distancing when the student per grade are not reduced? Would the number of students per grade have to be reduced for this? Yeah, maybe this person came in a little bit late, but I talked about that. So our classrooms and classroom sizes probably does not, they don't enable us to have a full 6 feet between each desk. So we're gonna try to do the best we can with that. The alternate is you split a class in half and do like morning and afternoon sessions or every other day sessions. But I think that can be a real strain on families. So I want to try to avoid that and try to work within the square footage that we have to try to, again, not be able to eliminate the risk, but to try to limit the risk. Okay, another thing that came up on parent surveys was just social emotional intelligence. And as a staff, we need to do some more training on that. We're seeing more students with anxiety and depression type symptoms. And how do we handle that as teachers and help kids better understand their emotional intelligence and how they interact with others? So we've got to help students do that. And then, of course, counseling, whether it's one of our pastors, myself, or utilizing Christian Family Solutions, providing counseling when students or families need that. Okay. The last thing I want to hit here is just summer improvements and staff activity for this summer. So currently we're reviewing our math curriculum. We'll keep you posted. Right now it has nothing to do with changing a textbook. It's just reviewing our standards. When we get to the point of examining or reviewing a textbook, we'll probably solicit parents if they want to be a part of that process. But as far as math textbooks for next year, we are using Saxon Math for next year. Reading Street for grades 3 and 4. We introduced Reading Street as our language arts curriculum last year in grades 1 and 2, and our teachers liked it, and I felt like students learned, and I felt like families enjoyed it, and we're rolling that out for grades 3 and 4 as well this year. We want to implement a financial literacy curriculum at the very minimum 8th grade, but maybe looking at something for the upper grades. Formal intervention document. So if you have a child that regularly goes to the IE room for extra support, I have Nikki and Brooke working on a formal intervention document that can be a clear communication piece between classroom teacher, IE staff, and you as parents. We have 60 new Chromebooks on order. Hopefully we're able to get those. I know there's a backlog on them, but we're gonna add 60 new Chromebooks to our fleet. We've got some that we gotta switch out and new ones to bring in. We are establishing our academic dean position with Mr. Hack. So he's already led one meeting on math curriculum. So he's gonna be assuming some roles in the area of academics as time goes on. Professional growth. A lot of our teachers are taking classes, whether it's formal or just webinars, whether they're for credit or just continuation or hours of continuing ed. So we've got teachers that are growing. I've given them a book also to read over the summer called Atomic Habits, which we're going to take a look at and see how that applies to them as teachers and then as for our students. And of course, we've got a lot of planning to do for on-site and virtual learning if that were to happen. We're going to be welcoming Mrs. Miriam Shawi to our third grade team. Her and Mrs. Teets will be together tackling third grade. I'm excited, and I sent out a separate email on that, so I won't go into detail there, but certainly if you're a third grade parent and want any information that I haven't shared, I'm happy to share that with you. Calling a new pastor. You know, Pastor Parsons played an important role for our school. And that's a void now that we're going to have to pick up. And hopefully God blesses us with a new pastor soon. I know that church council is going to be talking about the timeline next Monday. So look for information on the calling of a pastor here, probably, I would think, sometime in July. Extended care program. So at the end of the year last year, Mrs. Kunis and I just talked, and that program has grown so much, whether it was COVID or not. We want to split younger grades and older grades. And we're looking at finishing off one of the empty classrooms at the end of the new hallway in the wing for extended care so that we can be able to break up that group of children with younger kids and older kids. So we're continuing to work at that. I'll keep you updated. We'll have to add an additional staff member. So there will be a job posting for that coming out. You can take a look at that as time goes on. School kitchen remodel planning. You know, it's one of my quote unquote secret goals to at some point to have our school get out of the federal hot lunch program for various reasons. And in order to do that, we need to have a commercialized, commercial grade kitchen where we can prepare our own food. We do not have that right now. So I've been working with someone that Excel Energy put me in contact with, and church council and school board gave me their blessing with just working with this individual to come up with a plan. And then the next step would be, what would the cost be? And then roll it out and see what we could do in the next year or two to remodel our kitchen and maybe transition from the federal hot lunch program to an in-house program. So that's on the docket. Okay. Questions? Any other questions? I'm just gonna bring up chat here. Question came up here. Children that are not very good at self-learning will benefit from in-building instruction. I hope this can be accomplished somehow so kids do not get further behind. And I appreciate that thought again. I wholeheartedly want kids in the building. I think it's best for them, for most children, academically, emotionally, and best for families too. So if at all possible, I want to make that happen. What would be the benefit of not being in the federal hot lunch program? Good question. So the federal hot lunch program continues to have layers upon layers upon layers of regulations. What goes into serving a child a meal, you would be very surprised at all the checklist items that Diane Puck has to do, and then myself and Holly Miller has to do to keep that program running. There is just layer upon layer, hoop after hoop you have to jump through to keep that program going. So that's one thing. The other thing is being able to serve food that we want to. You know, we only get what we get. So we might be able to serve food that might be more appealing to all of the children if we're able to make it in-house. We would still try to figure out a way that those that would qualify for free and reduced to be able to execute that in-house some way. But anytime you're connected in with a federal program, there's a lot of strings attached. Any other questions? Will you be utilizing volunteers? Again, I'd said that we're going to keep parents out of the building during the school days. So initially, probably not. Probably not. That might change as we get into the school year if we feel like we can do it in a safe manner. And again, you know, volunteering at school is a big part of what we do at Faith. And it kills me to say that we probably won't have volunteers. But until I feel 100% comfortable with the risk, then no. Next question, and again, you guys can log off at any time, and I'll just continue to stick on. If you guys got questions, I'll stick around as long as you want. When virtual learning is explored, is it possible to employ one teacher preparing all the content for all grades, or is it necessary to have one teacher for each grade? Yeah, that's a good question. I think anything's possible, but for one teacher to try to prep for, you know, multiple lessons, multiple grades, that would be a challenge. Maybe you could have one teacher for a couple grades, but you know, if you talk with our staff, you know, for example, my religion lessons that I taught online this spring, and I've taught this curriculum several years. So classroom wise, I was ready to go and able to teach, but virtually I spent 2 to 3 hours on one lesson prepping for it, because you just got to approach it differently, build online assessments. It's very labor intensive. Now, once you get it all built out, then it's definitely different. Will there be third grade? Where will the third grade classrooms be located? Well, Mrs. Teets will be one third grade classroom, and the classroom right opposite where Mrs. Gudix was second grade, that's going to be the other third grade classroom. So they're going to be parallel one another, or not parallel, adjacent from one another. Any idea of the cost difference on an in-house food program? Yeah, I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I do have schools that do in-house programs. Mount Olive and Appleton runs a program, and preliminary talks with them, they say they can fund it. St. Peter's across town does it as well. WA does it. So there are models that do it, and so it can be self-sustaining, but I don't have specific numbers. Thank you, Mr. Yeager, for that positive comment. Appreciate that. And Mr. Puck, thank you for that comment too, just with in-house food program. Any other thoughts, questions? And again, I can stick around as long as you guys want. We can chat about school. We can chat about the NBA. We can chat about the Herkstroder's new puppy. Whatever you want. Let's see, how difficult was it from the faculty's viewpoint to get in the credit hours doing virtual learning this past spring? Okay, so one point there is that DPI waived the number of instructional hours for all schools. So one, there wasn't a target hour amount that we had to hit. So that was a relief. Two, hitting content. You know, we, for the most part, just in my dialogue with teachers, we hit all of our curriculum objectives that we wanted to. There were probably some things that we missed. I know for example, life science teacher, we always dissect worms and frogs at the end of the school year. Now we did a little worm activity at home, and we actually did a virtual squid dissection. So maybe it was an apple for an apple. But overall, our faculty felt like we hit most of our objectives. Now, there were also some classes that we didn't continue, things like junior choir, maybe some art classes, maybe some PE classes, maybe some music classes. So some of those peripheral curriculum classes, we didn't hit 100%, but our core curriculum, we felt pretty good about. With the virtual academy benefit from a more IT experienced staff, for example, Mrs. Neubauer would still prepare the lessons, but an IT assistant would prep the online material. That's a great point. One model I've thought about, and we got to look at that as a committee, is, what if we had an IT person filming the lesson in the classroom and then posting it? So if we had specific people doing that, I think that's a possibility. The one thing that you miss out on then is interaction. I love it that our teachers try to, via Zoom or Google Hangouts interact with kids. So that would be one thing that would be tricky about that. What about kids' cubbies so close together? Yeah, good question. I'll add that to my list. That is something that I haven't necessarily thought about. My first thought is I'm not so much worried about like a backpack touching someone's coat. What I'm worried about is if kid A and kid B are right beside each other by those cubbies or coat hooks, dialoguing. That would be my concern. So we're going to have to think about that. So thanks for bringing that up. Again, thanks. Thank you, Lauren, for that comment. Anything else, guys? Feel free to email me, text me. And again, I've got this recorded, so if you want to go back and watch it again, and I'll record tomorrow's as well and see which one is better. I imagine there will be similar questions that come up tomorrow. Let's see, last question here, and then we'll call it good. Good question. What about if a family is exposed and needs self-quarantine? Will those days be counted as sick, and if they go past the normal allowed number? Yeah, it's all about flexibility. So let's say a family is exposed and they need to quarantine. I am not going to count that against them. We'll work on just completing coursework from home, and those won't be absences. If we were to happen to have a case within our building, what we do, that's where the Fond du Lac Health Department will come into play, and I'm going to lean heavily on them to navigate through something like that. Let's see, can you put a list of comments, questions together that were brought up in these meetings? Yeah, I can work to do that. When I send out the link to whatever recording I do, I can maybe do a Q&A, just go back and do a Q&A typed out section. What about attendance for church for the kids? Well, I think with that, fourth quarter we waived it, but I think moving forward, we are going to have an emphasis on church attendance, but it can be, online with your family at home or in person. But, I still want us growing as school families spiritually. So that is something that we'll bring back into the report card, but we'll just be flexible with it with online or in person. All right, guys. Hope and pray that everyone's families are healthy and continue to be healthy. And I just pray that God would bless us with, discernment and understanding and just wisdom within our school community and nation as we navigate through these tricky times with COVID and with just the high tensions within our nation right now regarding protests with racism, all of that. And I just pray that there's peace. thanks for tuning in tonight. You're welcome to come back for the repeat tomorrow if you want. Otherwise, again, look for an email with this link in it, and also I'll try to do a Q&A.